Thank you to ChefsTemp for sponsoring what might be the most out of this world steak I've ever eaten. Let's see what it does. This is an American Wagyu chuck eye steak. I am so excited to cook this, but here's the thing, American Wagyu, even though it's not as fancy as Japanese Wagyu and as expensive as Japanese Wagyu, it is still not a cheap cut. This, depending on where you are, the farm that you get this kind of thing from, can be as much as $50 a pound. You might find it for about $25 a pound. That's about what we found this for. And it really depends on the cut and the grade and where you're getting it from. But this Wagyu is going to be amazing. But here's the trick. When you have Wagyu, you don't want to screw it up. So I want to introduce you to a new tool in my kitchen that I think is going to make what I'm about to do with this not only accurate and incredible, but I think it may make this one of the best steaks I've ever eaten in my life, if it works the way it says it does. Let's go ahead and check it out, and let me show you the best way that you could ever cook something as fancy and nice as an American Wagyu chuck eye. And no matter what steak you have at home, let's show you how to do something like this the ultimate way. Today on Chris Cookin' Nashville. So it is vital with this American Wagyu that I do not overcook or undercook. And there's a couple of reasons for that. But before we get into why we're going to cook it exactly the way we are, let's talk about the tool that's going to make that possible. This is the ChefsTemp Pro Plus 2. This is the upgraded version of the ChefsTemp Pro Plus. Not only is this including all of the fantastic features of their old model, which of course is the accuracy and the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connectivity, and there's an app that's on your phone that you can track this wirelessly. You also have the main housing, which means if you don't have the app, you can still use these thermometers to track your cooks perfectly. Also, this new upgraded version actually goes all the way up to 1,000 degrees, so you can use this on the hottest grill to track your cooks without worrying about damaging it because of the really high heat. I'm going to show you some of the screenshots of the app on my phone so you can see exactly how I did this cook. We're going to give this thing a test, because when you cook something like an American Wagyu chuck eye, you do not want to overcook it. Stick around to the end and you're going to find out, does the ProTemp Plus 2 actually cook this accurately to where it is the best steak I've ever had? Or is it going to leave me hanging and over or undercook my steak, making me wish that I would have just done it instinctually the way that I usually cook my steaks? We'll find out. I'm going to do what's called reverse sear. And if you've never done a reverse sear, you're really missing out with this kind of steak especially. It doesn't matter how expensive or cheap the cut of steak is, the principle is the same. I'm doing it with this American Wagyu because there's a couple of things about doing a reverse sear that are specifically helpful for doing something like this large chuck eye. So a chuck eye is the part of the chuck roast that is closest to the ribeye. So it actually shares a lot of things in common with ribeye when it comes to texture and flavor. And you can see this is a very thick cut. Trying to cook this as a steak as is, I would have a very hard time getting the center of this cooked properly without overcooking a bunch of the steak on the way towards the center. This is where reverse sear really comes in, and specifically this is where the ChefsTemp Pro Plus 2 is going to make a big difference. You can see on the housing here, I actually have 2 of these probes. You can pair up to 3 of these and track 3 different cooks simultaneously with the housing and with the app. So it's really, really helpful. We're going to insert this into the thickest part of this meat. The sensor is here in the tip. So we want the tip to end up right in the center of the thickest part of the meat. So I'm actually going to come from the end and I'm going to go straight in right to the center of this beef. This is a needle-shaped probe. So it's not as big around as many of those probes that are out there, which means it inserts easily and it doesn't leave a big gaping hole where I've had the probe in the meat. What we're going to do is put this in a low oven. I have my oven set at 250 degrees Fahrenheit. We're going to set this on a rack and we're going to put that in the oven. So we have 360 degree airflow around the meat. So we're not getting any direct cooking from the pan underneath of the steak. I've had this sitting at room temperature, so hopefully this happens as evenly as possible. We're going to put this in and let the ChefsTemp tell us what the internal temperature is. And we're going to bring this up to 125 degrees Fahrenheit for medium rare. 120 to 125 is where we want to hit. As soon as this comes to proper temperature internally, I'm going to take this out and it's going to rest for 10 to 15 minutes. That way we don't get any overcooking. And then we're going to use cast iron and we're going to sear the outside of this at a really high temperature to get that crust we want on the outside without cooking it through any further. And the cool thing is that the ChefsTemp is going to tell us exactly where the internal part of this steak is all the way through that cooking process. American Wagyu is known for having a lot of intramuscular fat, and a chuck eye specifically is going to have intramuscular fat, but we want to give it time for those proteins, the myosin and the actin, to break down. That's going to give us a tender steak. We also want to render that intramuscular fat out some at that low temperature over an extended period, because rendering that fat is going to help cook the steak, keep it juicy, tender, and flavorful without feeling like we're chewing on uncooked fat if we didn't get the middle of it done. So for a thick cut like this American Wagyu, doing a reverse sear is actually ideal because we can slowly cook it all the way through, render the fat, tenderize by breaking down those protein bonds, and then we can use the really hot skillet, sear the outside without affecting our internal cook. And once that's done, I'm going to cut this in half down the middle. We're going to treat it like a prime rib and we're going to enjoy that. So this has been salted and sat at room temperature for about an hour and a half. I'm going to put a little bit of my special CCN seasoning, which will be in my cookbook coming up. And then we're going to crust this after it has gone in the oven and come up to temperature with that reverse sear method. Let's go ahead and put some extra seasoning on the outside of this now that the salt has worked its way all the way through and I've patted it dry. We're gonna let ChefsTemp do all of the heavy lifting. Does it properly cook this steak, or would I have been better off doing it myself? Let's get it ready and throw it in the oven. So this is the app on my phone. I'm going to set up the cook and you can see the internal temperature is about 55 degrees. So it's a little below room temperature, but that's all right. We're okay with that. So I'm gonna tap to set up the cook. Now you can see there's a lot of different options here. There's beef and pork and lamb, poultry, fish, other, all sorts of things. There's also a history. I'm just gonna go into a custom cook because I know exactly what I want this to be. And I'm going to pull this temperature back by rolling the slider. And I'm gonna shoot for 120 degrees for it to tell me, because I want to go somewhere between 120 and 125. But what I don't want to do is have it hit 125, pull it out, and then end up with it being overcooked because of carryover cooking. So I'm going to take that 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and then I can always let it go a little longer if need be. And we're going to hit start cook. It's going to tell you to make sure you insert the probe fully before cooking because you don't want to do anything weird to those sensors. I can just choose don't show this message again. Keep your ProTemp stand as close as possible to your cooker or grill or oven, and that way it will stay connected and it's going to boost the signal. So that's what it looks like the first time time you use it. We hit start cook, and there we go. And now it's going to start tracking this. It's going to show the target temperature, the ambient temperature, and the internal temperature. So we're going to let it do its thing, and I'll show you what it says once it has had time to calculate.
Hey babe, what you doing?
Cooking dinner.
Cooking dinner? How long till dinner's ready?
ChefsTemp says a little under an hour.
Very cool. Babe, I'm getting hungry. When's dinner?
ChefsTemp says about 21 minutes.
21 minutes. All right, one more lap.
That's going to be in there for probably 60 to 90 minutes, but we're going to let the ChefsTemp tell us exactly when it's done. But in the meantime, I've got some notes here. I just wanted to let you guys know some of the cool stuff that the ChefsTemp has going on. So we talked about the needle probe. Also, the temperature controller can be paired with a barbecue griller fan that ChefsTemp has. So if you want to control the temperature of your grill, you can actually connect this and help control the temperature of your grill with this fan that will kick on automatically to help raise temperature or kick off to bring the temperature of your grill down. There really is no range issue. You can leave that housing really close to whatever it is you're cooking, and because it is connected to the Wi-Fi, you can monitor this on your phone or your tablet or anything like that anywhere that you have a wireless connection. The ambient temperature can be up to 1,000 degrees, and this is still going to be okay. That's a really cool feature, especially if you're using things like a grill where you're searing at a really high temperature with those direct coal heat levels. You do have the option of using just the stand to monitor this. So if you don't have a cell phone or a tablet that you could pair this with, it's totally fine. You can still use this. Or if you have an Apple Watch, you can actually use your watch to monitor this as well. So it gives you a lot of really cool options. And like we said, you can pair up to 3 probes with this housing. So you can do 3 separate cooks and track all of them simultaneously. That's going to be really helpful for the holidays that are coming up when you have multiple things in the oven, like a turkey and maybe some sides or maybe a prime rib or whatever it is you're trying to track. This is going to let you do all of them simultaneously. I think this is a fantastic piece of machinery, and just looking at everything on their website, in the app, all of the information that came with the ChefsTemp itself, it's really cool and it has a lot of great functionality. I'm pretty good at cooking instinctually and knowing the doneness of things, but the best chefs in the world always want to make sure that their food is done exactly right, and probe thermometers are one of the easiest ways to do that. If it does as good of a job as they say it will, this is going to be a regular thing in my kitchen to use. Let's take a look at that steak as soon as it's ready to come out of the oven and get the sear. All right, the ProTemp +2 says we are at temperature, so we're going to acknowledge that notification. Says take off from heat, tap to continue, says the food is ready. We're gonna let it rest now for 10 to 15 minutes before we sear. Once I took this out of the oven at 120, carryover cooking took this up to 128. You're gonna get between 5 and 10 degrees usually of carryover cooking rise in temperature. So you want to account for that if you're not using one of the pre-programmed presets that are in the ChefsTemp. I'm gonna get a cast iron skillet up to a very high temperature, and we're going to use a little bit of bacon grease. You can use whatever kind of fat you want, ghee or lard or tallow or whatever. We're going to sear this on all sides very quickly, very high heat, just to get a crust. The outside of this is dry because it's been sitting in that hot, dry environment of that low oven. That's gonna make getting a crust on the outside of this very, very easy. Let's see how good of a job the ChefsTemp does as soon as we get done searing. There we go. That's the ChefsTemp ProTemp Plus 2. And man, does it look like it did a great job on these steaks.
It really does.
These look so good.
Yeah, the color of them is beautiful. I wasn't expecting the dark color on the outside of the crust and then just to be so pink.
It's just perfectly deep reddish pink all the way through, the exact same color all the way through. Shout out to Bare Bones Butcher, by the way, which is where we bought this incredible Wagyu chuck eye. I can't wait to try this. So
it's a tough job. Oh wow, you almost like don't even need the knife. Oh my gosh. Wow, the best piece of meat I've seriously ever eaten. I'm a little speechless right now because it's so good. The crust on the outside is perfect. Your seasoning on this, perfection. Tender, juicy. You wanna know what heaven tastes like? That.
Perfectly cooked all the way through. And that's the hard part with something that is this thick. Renders all that fat, which is why it's so juicy on the inside, but it slowly cooks so you don't get like a thick band of really well done steak and then a band of like medium well and then a band of medium and then a band of medium rare and then a cold spot in the center. You get one really even cook all the way through that's within a few degrees of each other, and then you get just a thin outer layer that is really crusted from the skillet. Reverse sear is the way to do it. And if you're gonna do a reverse sear, best thing you can possibly do is use something like the ChefsTemp, because it's going to guarantee you get it done right all the way through, and you're not guessing by time and poundage and what temperature was it to start with, and there's all of these variables. Using the ChefsTemp, it has multiple sensors along there so you can see that it's cooking as evenly as possible throughout it. It has the ambient temperature sensor, so if something happens weird with your oven, like it's starting to not work or it's getting way too hot, you'll know that too. Makes it so much easier to cook something like this perfectly. And if you're gonna go do something special, spend the money on a nice steak, you want to know and have the confidence that you are going to nail it and cook it perfectly. And this is the way you do that. And you could stick it in just a big old thick ribeye and throw it in a skillet and cook it on both sides and do the exact same thing. This is a fantastic product that will help you do it perfectly every time, especially if you don't have the confidence to just, I know I can nail a steak every single time. This is how you know you get it right. Definitely going back to Bare Bones Butcher, and I will definitely be keeping the ChefsTemp here in the kitchen charged, ready to go. Now you guys saw I used cast iron, and the reason I did that is you want a hot, heavy bottom pan so that when you put the steak in it, it doesn't just suck all the heat right back out of it. So you want something heavy like cast iron. I also have a Lodge link for Lodge cast iron in the description box down below, along with all the links for ChefsTemp. So what you need to do is go down to the description box, look at the link for ChefsTemp. I'm gonna have a discount code down there for you to get a little bit off of your ChefsTemp purchase, and maybe pick up a Lodge cast iron skillet to go with it so that you can have something like this, because this is incredible. And the cheapest steak you can find at the store is gonna be made better doing it this way. We are going to enjoy our steaks while they are hot. We appreciate you guys watching. Thank you for being here. This is Chris cooking Nashville, the beautiful Ash Taylor. You guys eat your meat, especially when it's cooked perfectly in partnership with ChefsTemp. Love your life. We'll see you in the kitchen for more wonderful tips of how to cook steak perfectly just like this. And if you like this chuck eye steak done Wagyu style with ChefsTemp, you gotta check out this video right over here.
I am seriously just speechless on how good this is.
I was gonna be real upset if ChefsTemp didn't work.
Oh, it worked.
It worked.
It worked.